Hi guys, Squall here, and welcome to a first look of the brand new Aerosoft CRJ550ER and the CRJ700ER. This is a highly anticipated aircraft from Aerosoft, and it's available soon for Microsoft Flight Simulator. What you have in front of you is the pre-release version of the CRJ550. The 700 looks almost identical. I think this is a 50-seat version, and the CRJ700 is the 70-seat version. This is the more modern one that's based on the 700. Now, this is a pre-release first look, so what that means is I won't have time to cover and test all aspects of this aircraft. I've only just been given it a few days ahead of the release. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you around the actual aircraft. It's very, very detailed, very exquisitely modeled. Inside the cockpit as well, it looks absolutely beautiful, and there's a full array of systems. How deep they go is anybody's guess. Like I say, I've not had a chance to properly play around with the whole flight management system, but there's certainly quite a bit there to get our teeth into. So what we'll do is we'll jump inside the aircraft, we'll go through some of the startup procedures, I'll show you the functioning tablet system and the door controls, etc. We'll fire up the APU, fire up the main engines, and we'll take it for a quick circuit before landing back here at Kissimmee Airfield. So from the aircraft selection screen in Microsoft Flight Simulator, you're presented with two aircraft, the CRJ550ER and the CRJ700ER. Both have identical stats, but of course this has more seats. The 550, being the newer one, doesn't have as many liveries. In fact, it has a United Express livery, which I assume is a kind of a United Airlines type livery, and a private, private kind of aircraft livery, just a basic red and white. The CRJ700, on the other hand, I'm guessing because of maybe the existing P3D licenses they've got in place, they've actually got Lufthansa Original, and they've got Air France, Lufthansa City Line, Delta Airlines, Horizon Air, Alaskan Airlines, and a kind of a fake American airline, which is American Eagle, but looks distinctly like an American airline. Weight and balance, as I say, this isn't terribly important, and I'll show you why when you're actually in the aircraft itself. And then the usual customization screen and failures, which are, you can use, I guess. I've not tried them, but I assume they're supported. So that's what you get out the box, certainly in the pre-release version. I don't expect it to change in the main release, but maybe you'll get some more liveries by the time this thing goes live. So let's start off by having a quick walk around of the CRJ 550. As you can see, texture-wise and detail-wise, it's pretty good. It's what you expect from a modern Microsoft Flight Simulator aircraft. Very well specified, excellent rendering, great use of PBR. Looks pretty fantastic, I would suggest. These lights obviously are all functional. I'll tell you about things that are specifically not functional as we go through and look at the actual aircraft. I just want to give you a sort of sense of the quality of the visuals at the moment. I mean, itself, the CRJ is a lovely aircraft, and this thing is actually quite a pleasure to fly in many respects. It flies very smoothly. Some of the stuff I did notice on the texture inside mostly happens when you start to get inside the undercarriage. So say down here, where you generally don't look anyway, but you can see you've got sort of floating pipes and not much detail going on apart from the texturing, and certainly down at the front here you can see some of the texturing isn't quite high quality. Whether this will be upgraded ahead of release, I don't know, but that's what it looks like right now. So let's jump inside the cockpit and have a look around. So here we are inside the cockpit of the CRJ 550. You can notice the big tablet on the left over here, and just get a sense of the general feel, I should say, of the rendering and detail inside. Not all of the buttons are actually operational, although a lot of them are. I haven't actually tested any of the panel at the back here. Some of these buttons are clickable, but I don't know to what extent this stuff is simulated yet. Like I say, really haven't had a lot of time to spend with this aircraft. But as you can see, visual fidelity is definitely up there. Now, one of the things you can do is click over here on the tablet. This tablet is always available, even when this thing is cold and dark, which is what it currently is. They do bundle it with a set of aircraft states that you can kick into with the cold and dark, turn around, ready for startup, ready for taxi. When I spawned this on the runway, it appeared to spawn in fully operational, but then immediately started to sort of shut down the engines as the systems came online. So I don't know if that's something that will necessarily work. Like a lot of aircraft, you spawn them on the runway and they're ready to go in Microsoft Flight Sim, but this one didn't seem to want to play ball in this pre-release version. So what we'll do is we'll kind of run through some of the startup states, but there's some things that I just kind of wanted to show you that are specific to the CRJ. Some of these things are actually quite nice. For example, under the options, you can choose your own temperature and weight units, and also your barometer. And what that does is it properly affects what's going on in the aircraft displays, which is great because, you know, depending on whether you want to fly with international or more imperial style, it's up to you. We'll go through this in a second. This is something that I did want to show you though, and yeah, there's lots of options here, but the calibrate throttle is quite a cool option. So normally down here on the CRJ, you've got this kind of gated throttle control. Actually, it's not operational at the moment, so I'll need to turn the aircraft on. But what you can do with the calibration is you can set at what point these detents kick in based on your own personal throttle. And if your personal throttle has a reverser axis, which a lot of them don't, a lot of them are just a reverser button. When you pull them back, they go over a gate and activate a button. You can actually calibrate it so that it goes into the reverser axis. So that's kind of cool. Under the maintenance section, you have various bits and pieces that none of which I've actually played with to do with oxygen masks and things. I'm not sure if they're operational. Like I say, under the aircraft, you can open the doors, you can bring in the ground power cart and that kind of thing. Performance we'll go through in a little bit, and then there's quite a detailed set of checklists that you can go through, which brings me neatly to one of the points currently is that there's no integration with the built-in Microsoft Flight Simulator checklist. There's quite a detailed set of checklists here, which you can use, and they are very detailed, but they're not currently built into Microsoft Flight Sim style where it will actually, you know, move you to the control and highlight it. I believe they plan to add that a bit later on. There are a full set of manuals that you get with this thing. The documentation is pretty extensive. Let me just quickly show you that. If I bring in my display, there we go. So as you can see, you get quite a lot of manuals. I suspect they've lifted this stuff over from P3D and modified it maybe. But for example, the quick reference guide, if I quickly open the quick reference guide, you will see that this thing is in fact 86 pages long. So in terms of documentation, at least, there's quite a lot of stuff that you can chew through here, none of which I've particularly gone through apart from the VREF speeds and things like that. Anyway, let's power this thing on and we'll have a quick play around. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll bring in the ground power card, so that's connected. Unfortunately, there's nothing visual outside, but it is connected. If we turn on the battery, we can see we've got available AC power, so we'll turn that on. That then brings the aircraft to life. Let's clear down those warnings. Notice the IRS is not aligned. If we go to the options, I've got it on quick IRS align time. By default, it's on instant. So what happens is if we go and turn on the IRS to allow into nav mode, if you're on instant, they'd instantly display, but at the moment it's still trying to figure out where it is. So while it does that, let's have a quick visual kind of tour of this. You've got two displays here. On the left, this is obviously your attitude indicator, compass, altimeter, speedo, etc. And over here is effectively what your area looks like, along with your flight plan overlaid on it. You can, in fact, using this button on the left here, you can zoom in and out. That shows you your range. And then on the outer wheel is the format, as you can see. You can go through various... if you used to flying things like Boeings and stuff, this will be relatively familiar to you anyway. I'm just showing you that basically it works. Like over here is the 29982. If we press the B key and reset the baro, that's our local pressure in inches. And if you press that button there, you can flick it to millibars. Fantastic. You can move from imperial to metric at the push of a button. Decision height MDA here. I've not played with these to see how functional they are. Down here, you've got the failure in case you have one of the failures. I don't think the aircraft supports failures in that regard anyway, but it's got the display switching anyway in case you do. You've got your clock up there. Lighting over here, rather nice integrated lighting, and the floodlights, which works nicely, and even a floor light if you want to see your feet down there. Nose of steering is normally off from cold and dark. You want it armed when you're taxiing. Well, you want it armed most of the time, apart from when you're getting pushback, in which case you want to turn it off because you don't want to have your steering column broken, although who knows if that's been modeled. Like I say, all your Imperial options here. Aircraft maintenance. Let's open some doors. Let's get these doors open. Ground, air cart. We'll put that in, see if it shows anything. We'll quickly jump outside. There we go. And there we go. My controller's now working. As we can see, the doors are now open. Service doors and the air stairs to get in and out, the cargo bays, etc. all open. What's not so brilliant is the internal textures. These things are all a bit low texture. I don't know if they just copied them over from the P3D 700. Maybe. I really don't know. Similar story inside. If we can... Good God. There we go. If we can walk through. Not the most amazing textures in the world. I mean... It's all about compromise, isn't it? Maybe they'll come back and polish this stuff up. Maybe they just don't care because they don't see it's important anyway. Outside it looks fantastic, but obviously when you start digging in the wells and inside the bits and pieces, that's when you see the compromises. But otherwise, you know, it looks fantastic. It certainly looks fantastic in the cockpit and fantastic outside. It's just when you start poking around, I guess. Let's get rid of that. And of course, what will happen now...
Captain, the cabin is secure. All passengers are aboard.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the captain and crew, welcome aboard this flight. We hope you enjoy flying with us.
These are options that you can turn off.
We would like to encourage all passengers to watch our cabin crew.
The announcements not necessarily kick off at the right moments. I've had it taken off as I put my gear up. It says, "Ladies and gentlemen, please prepare for landing." So you get some crazy stuff. Like I say, pre-release bugs probably. But anyway, the IRS has now aligned, as we can see. Which allows me to show you, if I zoom to here, you can actually change the color of this if you want to. By default, it's quite a dirty beige brown. But if you wanted to make it a bit more red, you could just, you know, tweak the red up from 87 to say, I don't know, 120. Click OK. Click OK. There we go. And as you can see, it's a lot more kind of orangey. Same thing with the blue. So it's a nice little option if you want to, you know, change the colors of these displays. And over here, under the performance, right, so we'll go through this now. But what I want to do quickly is, now the IRS is aligned, is we'll copy, we're at Kissimmee. If we actually put in Kissimmee, you'll see that 28 degrees, 17.4, 20 degrees. This is our exact location, and it looks in line with Kissimmee, which is where we are. So we'll just take the exact location and stick it in to the flight computer so it knows where we are. And then what we'll do is we'll say that we're going from Kissimmee. We'll punch in, just to show you, we'll punch in, say, Orlando, which is it's actually there, you can see it. It's actually very close. We'll say that as a destination. Exec. Go to the perf and it page. And this is where it gets interesting because... at the moment, it's all displayed in pounds, as you can see. But if we actually go to the maintenance, to the options page, sorry, and move it into kilograms, the display switches. So this is great because one of the bugbears I had with Microsoft Flight Sim at the start was the fact that you were forced into Imperial, and it's very difficult to switch out of it. Whereas with this thing, if we want to, we can just go fully metric. As it turns out, it's not massively important because the aircraft will allow you on the performance data to calculate things for you automatically. Let me show you what I mean by that. So let's say out of 50 passengers, because we're on the CRJ550, has a 50 passenger limit. Let's say we want to take this much cargo. You can see the weight and balance chart over here, so you can make sure everything's under weight and balance. What you can then do, I'm going to quickly show you this data here. There's nothing here until what we can do is set the payload in the sim. So now the sim knows about how we've... Remember that screen at the start and the options before you begin your flight? This is why you don't need to use it anymore, because you can click this button in here and it will tell Microsoft Flight Sim how your payload and weight is being distributed. Then you can click this one here to copy the perf data into the FMS. And lo and behold, without having to faff around, it's all in there, which is it's pretty cool, actually. So let's put the cruise altitude at 3,000. No reason why to. And then I'll just show you the next page. We've actually got, you know, cruise and wind. Not played with any of this stuff. I'm showing you that it's here. To what extent this is modeled, I do not know. If we go to departure, let's say we're departing off 1.5. Exact that. And then let's say our arrival into KMCO. Let's say we're going to go in on, let's do an RNAV. We're not going to go there, but we'll just punch it in just to show you. RNAV 17 right, which should, if we zoom out of here, there we go. Should start to see the flight plan building up now. And then let's say we're going in on the Mini 5, maybe the LBV. Actually, some of these are quite big, aren't they? But you can see it's actually got the transitions stored, which is kind of cool. Let's just cancel that. I'll have 17 right. And then we'll go in on the Lee SE. There you go. Lee SE with a OTK or maybe an AMG transition, whatever you fancy. Exact that, and it punches it in. So you can kind of see that it, you know, it lets you build up the flight plans properly. This is a Boeing, of course. That would now turn magenta, wouldn't it? So that lets you put the flight plan in, and then you can click on the legs and see where your discontinuous are. We can click and copy that up there and exec it. We go to the next page and figure out where all the discos are, fix them. There you go. And then you've got your basic kind of flight plan at that point. So it'd have us taking off from Kissimmee and heading in, what's that, west? That's almost north. And then circling back for 17 right, was it? So that's all punched in. On your legs page, you can see that. And if you put MFD data here, it actually shows you all that stuff overlaid here. And you can do MFD menu and show nav status. It's pretty cool what you can do in the CRJ. All this stuff that you can basically put on this screen and then just get rid of it when you don't want it. So that's a nice touch. Anyway, that's a decent overview of the cockpit. I think the next thing to do is probably what you're waiting for anyway, which is, you know, get this thing fired up, see what it sounds like, and then we'll take it for a spin. Okay, I am not going to use the checklist. I'm just going to wing this. We're going to turn the nose wheel steering on because I've no intention of getting a pushback from here. We're literally going to head that way, get onto runway 15, take off, and take it for a flight. So what we'll do is, we're running out of daylight here. We shall turn on the beacon light, which is that way, and we shall start looking at the stuff up here. So we need to fire up the APU, which we can do by powering the APU, then clicking on start, and then we should see the APU spring to life. We'll jump outside and have a listen. You also get the heat wave coming off as well, so you should see the exhaust. If I sit there, you can probably see it better when it starts heating up. You see the windsock as well, so you can, you see that's, we're going to be turning right and taking off into wind. I thought it had a heat wave coming out of there. Interesting, maybe that was coming off. The main engines definitely do. Oh, that's an emission. Yeah, that should definitely have an effect coming out. So let's see, we've got the APU is now available. We'll turn the pumps to on. If I can just quickly move over here a little bit. Let's see. So the recon circulation. Try and remember how this works again. We'll leave that turned off for now. You can select the source and stuff, but I think we'll just leave it and get the actual engine fired up. So we want the hydraulics turned on, or rather in the on position for these, and then the auto position for that one. Can't remember what was special about that. There's something about the way that's driven from the ground power or something. I can't actually remember now. So APU powers on, which means now the AC is now available because it's switched over automatically. Those passenger signs should have already gone on. As to the emergency lights, should have already gone on. What else do we want to do? I thought I'd turned a light on then. I think that's the reflection. Unless I did turn something on. No, that's the actual sun. Just popped through. Let's see. Right, so in terms of engine start, let me just have a quick look at what it's saying here. All pressure light, that's fine. Mac and stability trim, so we can sort those out. Stability trim's there, Mac trim's there. That's pretty much everything extinguished that they need extinguished. The parking brake is indeed set. We've still got the wheel chocks on. We can probably remove the ground power cart now anyway and remove the wheel chocks. There we go. Everything's all closed, ready for takeoff. So we're running on our own power. So now we basically begin engine start. And the way to do that... Whoops. I've pressed the wrong button. I do apologize. The way we do that is we come up here and we click left or right engine. Let's go right engine. Click the start. And we come down here. And we monitor what the engine's doing. When it reaches about 20 on the N2, that's when we effectively throw in the power by bringing it out of the shutoff gate into the idle position, which we'll do. Like that, and then we'll jump outside. Oh, now you see the heat waves here. So the 3D audio in this CRJ, they've actually modeled it, well, it says in the instructions that they model it in 3D. So all the sounds that you hear, you know, if they're to your right, you'll hear them to your right. If it's to your left, you hear them to your left, etc. They've all been, like, correctly positioned. I should really be watching the engine start up, but I thought you'd want to watch this. And there goes the flight attendant. So we've got a clean start on engine 1. Let's get a clean start on engine 2. And while we do that, I'll talk about a couple of things. So in the CRJ, you can normally get the charts in the electronic flight bag. They're not able to do that in this version, and the reason is because Microsoft Flight Sim, the SDK doesn't allow outbound connections to the network, so they can't actually call out from within the sim and talk to some kind of a chart server, say, and bring charts into your electronic flight bag. Nor can they call out and do other... The only thing that's allowed in the SDK right now is terrain data and multiplayer data. So until Microsoft or Asobo open that up, they can't actually easily bring charts into the flight bags. That's one thing. The other thing is, it's same with like the weather services. They're a bit limited as well because they can't reach out and grab accurate METAR information. The windshield wiper does actually work, but because of the way that rain is handled on the glass in Microsoft Flight Sim currently, and I believe they're working on this at Asobo, the rain is actually like a 2D on the glass, so this doesn't, you can't wipe it off, basically, until Microsoft allow that. So that's not been implemented either. Same thing with like weather radar overlays and terrain overlays. They can't implement that, but I believe that the terrain overlay they're going to get on pretty soon, but the weather, again, can't do that until the Microsoft SDK allows it. So, you know, they've got it in P3D, but they can't put it in Microsoft Flight Sim yet because it's not available. One thing to note, if you do buy this, if you do end up buying this plane, when you first start it up, it takes about 5 minutes or so when it first starts up because it has to compile loads of DLLs. So it can freak you out initially thinking your sim's crashing, but just leave it for like 5 minutes when you first start it up, because it does take a bit of time. And like I say, the checklists are currently done in the tablet and not in Microsoft Flight Sim. That was a compromise for time. I think they're going to add them later at some point. So yeah, there's just a few things to be aware of. And although I've not tried the ILS approaches in this yet, they do say that it's still limited by whatever Microsoft Flight Sim does, because Microsoft Flight Sim still has issues on ILS approaches sometimes. So they do work, but you just got to keep your eye on what the plane's doing just in case it does something a bit crazy. Again, not really something that they can control. It's a thing that happens to all the aircraft in Microsoft Flight Sim at the moment. So as you can see, all sort of comm stuff is available. This looks really nice, actually. I think the way they've done this is really cool. Again, I've not really played with a lot of this stuff, but it does visually look fantastic. So we've cleared most of the problems here. Let's see if I can get rid of those warnings, which I couldn't get rid of last time. Oh, I just flicked on the anti-ice. Yeah, you see, that's a clickable thing, but currently I'm not able to click anything but that one, so I can't click these windshield heating things at the moment, which is I can't get rid of that. And one other thing that I did notice, and this you will notice this if you have a, like I've got the Honeycomb Alpha, right? Now, if I set my nav light to off or on, I'm flicking the switch right now, and this doesn't do anything, right? However, if I go to the outside and I flick my nav switch, you will notice that my nav light comes on. You can see it's on the other side. There's the green, there's the red. I can flick it off, and it goes off. I'll turn it off. I jump back in the cockpit, and I'll turn the nav light on here, and we'll jump outside. You see the nav light's on. I flick it on with my switch. I turn it off here, and it's still on until I flick it off with my switch. So what I'm trying to say is, my Honeycomb switches are not moving the switches here currently. So I can put nav on, I can put landing light on, taxi light on, beacon light on, strobe light on, and nothing actually moves. Again, this may be a pre-release thing, but I hope they get that working. You can basically use your controls that you have mapped in Flight Sim, or you can use these. Both of them will still work, but they don't kind of talk to each other properly. So, you know, you can look up and see things that are flicked in one position, but on your Honeycomb you've done something else. Just something to be aware of until that gets fixed. It was a bit weird at first. It really caught me out. Anyway, so we'll click on that, and that'll turn off the APU. We've got the recirc fans are all turned on. We don't need any anti-ice today. So yeah, I think we're just good enough to taxi right now. If we were doing a checklist, then you know, we'd start to look at the flaps for takeoff. So we'd want like 8 degrees of flaps or so for takeoff. We'll release the parking brake now, and we'll go and taxi out and put that on the legs page initially. Like I say, we're just going to have a little fly around, just wanting to get a feel for the aircraft. So, right, let's put my track IR on. There we go. Reset my position. There we go. Right, we're in the cockpit. So, down here, parking brake's going to off. A little bit of throttle, use the rudder pedals, make sure that nose wheel steering is on. Now with the rudder pedal you have a lot of control authority on the steering with the nose wheel steering turned on, so you don't need to use your toe brakes that much to steer. This thing is pretty controllable as it happens. As you can see, it looks rather nice.
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has advised that we are now cleared for takeoff.
The captain did not advise that at all. We are not cleared for takeoff, or not even cleared for departure. We've just been told to taxi over here. If you find that annoying, you can turn it off, as I say. So we'll flick the heading bug all the way around. Let's put it on rough runway heading, which is about, whoops. Oh, I hate that. I move my head slightly, the tracking position moves. There it goes. Let's just stop here a second. The downside of track IR, you can't keep your head still enough for this kind of thing. Right, so there we go. About 150, it doesn't strictly speaking matter. I just want to make sure we've got it punched in so we can see a rough guideline of where we're heading. If we were going to use the autopilot, then what we'll do is we'd punch in the altitude. We want to do an altitude hold or something, or we could punch V-speed in, or we could punch the nav in, heading bug, whatever you want to do. It's all there to be played with. Like I say, I can't get rid of those. Yaw damper stays off until after takeoff anyway, and then we'll turn the yaw damper on. You need the yaw damper on before the autopilot will engage, by the way. Something else to watch out for. So we'll stick the old landing lights on. Make sure strobes and logo are on. Flaps are set. Okay, let's enjoy a little takeoff here. What I'll do is I'll just hold the brakes, and then you can just you can hear the engine on fire up. We'll do an internal, actually we'll do an external one first. So I'll just shut up to climb and go external. So down the bottom left you can see, if I pull my throttle back now, we'll see the reversers engage. What I did notice, and I don't know, I can't remember the CRJ, whether there's a visual reverser, whether you see the reverser, because it doesn't change visually, and doesn't seem to make a noise either, so I'm not sure if I've just not done something right there. It's in reverser position. I presume it will cause, actually if I let go of the brakes and put the reversers on. Yeah, maybe something's not quite right there. It says reverser, but I'm not getting the reverser action. I'll have to figure that one out. Anyway, so we'll throttle up forward to the climb position. And power's set. Push the nose down slightly. There's 120, and we'll pull back. Whee. Yeah, a bit sporty. Gears coming up. Show you that on the external cam. What did I tell you? Let's back off on the power. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to land. You what, mate? We just took off? I'm just settling it down. Let's bring the flaps up.
The captain has turned off the seatbelt sign. You may now take off your seatbelt.
You see, I lift up the landing gear, she says we're coming into land. I lift up the flaps, she says I've turned off the passenger belt. I think somebody's got cross wires somewhere. Anyway, we're in flaps 0. Let me just pause the track IR a second and just get it a little bit leveled out. Because what I want to do is turn the old yaw damper on. And then see if we can quickly engage autopilot for a second. I'll put autopilot altitude bug. Check what it enunciates. It's enunciated heading and altitude. So if I turn right, there, head in a westerly direction, it should bank to the right. I'm just going to bring the throttle down. We're about to go a bit too quick. I don't want to get too quick. I just want to show you some of the basic stuff as it flies. And actually, Let me go to the drone camera because you can get a nicer view that way. See what it looks like when it's flying. I mean, it looks a treat, doesn't it? It looks really, really nice. It's actually a rather smooth flight as well. When you're actually hand flying this thing, if I put it, for example, on half bank roll and then take a turn like that, you can see it's a very smooth roll compared to if I, you know, full bank roll it. It handles itself really nicely. It's quite a nice thing to fly, actually. As for the onboard avionics and actual systems, I don't know to what depth these things are modeled yet. I need to dig deeper on that. That's going to take some time to really play around with. You know, I want to do a full a procedure ILS landing. I'd like to do a full flight in it just to see what it does. To see how the VNAV handles itself in particular. Just keep my speed up a little bit. We're starting to, we're starting to pitch up quite a lot. Doesn't like flying this slow at this without any flaps on, so we'll just push the speed forward a touch. Of course, it being a jet engine, there is a bit of a delay between putting your thrust in and actually having an effect. But when I see it pitching up at like nearly 10 degrees, I know it probably wants flaps at that point. So for the standard visual approach, the manual basically says you want to come in at about flaps 190 knots. Then you want to go down to flaps 8 on the notches here, flaps 8, 180. So it's 190 knots, 180 knots, then 170 knots. And then you want to be doing gear down. Then after that, you want to do 160, which is quite easy to remember, isn't it? It's 190, 80, 70, 60. And then for your final approach, you're going to be at flaps 45. You want to be at VREF plus half of your gust. Normally, that's about 120 knots-ish. That's where, you know, ballpark numbers is where you'd want to be. So what I'll do is I'll fly this along a bit. I'll spin it around and we'll come in and see if we can actually land this. Right, that's Kissimmee. Let's prepare for a landing. Just back off on the throttle. When the speed comes down, we'll drop the flaps. Just to make you aware of this, in case you didn't know, we've got a HUD available. Some people love them, some people hate them. Personally, I find them pretty useful. Right, that's under 200, so we bring flaps 1 down. Back off on the throttle a bit more, just go to idle now. Pull the nose up. Need to get it slowed down a bit. Does tend to glide a lot, this CRJ. Other thing we need to do really is turn off the yaw damper, which is done. Let's get the gear dropped. We need to get some drag now. Just watching the gear display here. Looking for 3 greens. A little bit high on profile. We're just idling in. There's 3 greens.
Sync rate.
I'm just getting the flaps in now to get the drag and stop the sink. There we go, 45 degrees. We're looking for about 120 knots. I'm just going to bring the power up now because we're reaching 120. And this thing does have a tendency to really sink if you let the speed get too low.
500.
I'd rather be a little bit too high on profile. There we go.
400.
We got it under control.
300. 300.
A little bit of a left to right wing going on. Keep the speed up.
100. 50. 40.
taking out
30,
most of the lights as we go.
20, 10.
Oh, a little bit of a wobble. Didn't deploy the spoilers. I'll tell you why I didn't deploy the spoilers, because I forgot to map a button to it. Actually, I think in the instructions it says you can't currently map a spoiler to it. Can't quite remember. But yeah, that's so I couldn't stop the wing lift. I couldn't stop the wing lift, so the left wing came up a little bit. It's all good though. We got it on the ground. Let's clean up the flaps. And turn off the landing lights. Let's taxi over here somewhat. We'll find somewhere to park up. It's actually gone dark quite quickly. I can't see those lights anymore. There we go. Strobes are off. We'll pull up here outside this hangar. So, as you can see, it's quite an interesting little thing to fly. It flies quite smoothly, actually. It doesn't like flying too slowly, though. Anything under 200 knots and it starts, the pitch angle comes right up. And once you get down to 120, if you're not careful, you can lose the plane into a sink very quickly. But that's just the CRJ, that's just the way it flies. Not the best place to pull up, but this'll do. Executive jet turns up outside some random GA hangar. Just park it up over here, doesn't really matter. So yeah, I mean, there's lots of more investigation to be done. One of the things I want to do is go through the whole FMS system in a bit more detail, plot a flight, see what the approach looks like, see how it handles things. There's definitely a lot here. Like, I think this is one of the kind of planes that we've been waiting for in terms of Microsoft Flight Sim. I'm not saying it's going to be without problems. Like, I'm sure they're fighting the SDK like everybody else is, and also they've got this thing out in a fairly timely manner, considering it's only March 2021, and the sim was only released, what, 7 months ago? I mean, that's a pretty good turnaround, but don't expect... I would say don't expect a polished, finished product. You're not going to get that. You're probably going to get something that is a bit of a rough diamond. So if you're kind of in it for the longer term, you might want to think about flying it, enjoy what's here, put up with any problems that it has. I'm not saying it does have them, but I feel certain it will have some. And go along for the ride, or just wait for them to polish it up and wait for the SDK to come up to speed from Asobo. That's pretty much where we're at. You know, what's here is a lot of fun, but I don't know if it's going to satisfy the people who are looking for a proper, stable instrument flying experience. I don't know if it does that yet. I'll have to wait for some future videos when I sort of dig into that. But I like what I see so far. This is a rather nice aircraft to fly. It looks good. It flies nice and smoothly. It's a lovely experience. But does the autopilot system work? I'll have to dig in. Anyway, that's a first look video. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And until the next video, take care, guys. Happy flying.